Hello, and welcome to the 59th TiddlyWiki Hangout. I'm Jeremy Ruston, the original creator of TiddlyWiki, and I'm joined on this Hangout on going from left to right on my screen by Branimir. Branimir, would you like to say hi and where you're from and your involvement in TiddlyWiki?
Hi, again, I'm the first one. Well, my name is Branimir, and I'm from Sofia, Bulgaria, using TiddlyWiki Classic for 3 years and more now, and trying to switch to the new TiddlyWiki 5.
Indeed. Great to have you here, Branimir. Mario, hi, how are you?
Hi, folks. My name is Mario Pitsch. I'm from Austria, near Salzburg, contributor to TiddlyWiki Classic with plugins and themes. Yeah, and with TiddlyWiki 5 with different stuff.
Indeed, I'm a maniac for making how-to videos recently, which we'll talk about that in a bit. And Nathan, let's say hi. Actually,
Hi,
Nathan said
Nathan
just
Kane.
a moment ago. Oh, okay. I thought you were not unable to speak, so I was going to introduce you, but go on.
I'm Nathan Kane. I'm a developer from the United States. I'm working with TiddlyWiki 5 as a developer for almost a year now, and watching my girlfriend as a user. She's actually close to getting sites into production with TiddlyWiki 5, which is quite exciting. Hopefully that'll be this week. So.
Oh, great. Well, I can't wait to see those. Excellent. Glad you could join us, Nathan. Leo, hiya. How are you?
Hi, my name is Leo. I'm joining under the alias Slonik, so feel free to refer to me either by name Leo or by my alias Slonik. I'm joining from New York City in the United States. I'm an active user of TiddlyWiki Classic, but I have my eyes firmly set on TiddlyWiki 5. I'm playing with it around, but you know, when it is finally released, I hope to move all my stuff to TiddlyWiki 5. Thanks.
Brilliant. Glad you can make it there. And finally, Ton, hiya, how are you?
Hi, I'm Ton Verner from the Netherlands, long-time user of TiddlyWiki, and now almost a year user of TiddlyWiki 5, and author of some guides about customization of TiddlyWiki 5.
Indeed, guides that you might well think I've been doing my best to make incompatible with some of the recent changes, but again, that's something that we may talk about today. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining me today. I've got a little list of things to talk about, but let's kick off first of all with the questions that are in the Q&A app that's built into Google Hangouts. We've got 2 questions at the moment. Do feel free to click through to add others, or of course we'll just take questions in the traditional disorganized way as well. So I'll kick off with the first question, which is from Branimir, and the question is that TiddlyWiki Classic has the search string highlighted among all open and found tiddlers. Any chance of adding a similar functionality in TiddlyWiki 5? It would be even better if there could be previous and next links to cycle through the found strings. So as usual, I'll just quickly do a demo to show what Branimir is asking about. So if I go to TiddlyWiki Classic and search for the word Jeremy, what TiddlyWiki Classic does is, in response to a search, is kind of 2 things. You get a list of all of the tiddlers that match the search, and it also closes any open tiddlers and then opens each of those tiddlers. And as Branimir says, there's a highlight applied to the string that was originally searched for. Although I must say in some of these cases it's not immediately obvious why I don't see the string Jeremy in that tiddler, but no doubt there's a reason for that. So I think there's a couple of problems with TiddlyWiki Classic search. One of them is that it closes all the open tiddlers, which is a big problem if you're working on something and need to refer to a search. It rather breaks your context by closing all the open tiddlers. It's also, if I search for Jeremy space Ruston, for instance, it does so. It's a strict search for that entire string, Jeremy space Ruston, and that's not how Google works, and so it's people's expectation. So in TiddlyWiki 5, there were a couple of things that I was trying to do. Firstly, to make the search, is to make the search less invasive. So say if I'm in the middle of editing this tiddler and I search for something, then all that I get is a list of the search results. I can open any of those tiddlers, but apart from the one that I open, it doesn't actually disturb the other open tiddlers. And what we don't have, as Branimir says, is the highlighting. So in terms of explaining why we don't have the highlighting, the primary reason is that the highlight support is a terrible, terrible, terrible hack. There is in the code a global called something like highlight hack, I think. If I do a view source, we might be able to look at the thing in question. Is a global variable that can contain either a regular expression that should be highlighted on display or null, in which case nothing gets highlighted. And you can see from my comment that at the time that I did this, I was acutely aware that it was a terrible, terrible solution. It's also a solution that's not really viable in TiddlyWiki 5 because we don't have the luxury of globals in quite the same way. So if we had a global highlight hack and we were working with multiple wiki objects, it's not so clear which one it would apply to. So that simple solution wasn't open to me. And what I would like to do to fix it is to have an enhanced search with a drop-down that includes previews, and for those previews to be highlighted. I believe that it's too structurally dodgy to make it so that text highlights within the open tiddlers, but having highlights in the previews within the search results, I think, is perfectly doable. So,
Jeremy, short introduction.
Interruption.
I used with Firefox. I used the browser search because there you have a possibility to say highlight.
Yes.
Then it also highlights all the stuff. So this works very well for me.
Yes, I mean likewise. I use the browser search regularly, and yeah, as you can see here, Firefox, Chrome, I think Firefox and Safari all do a reasonable job of highlighting. But it's still not ideal. I mean, one would like to be able to do it natively within TiddlyWiki 5.
I have 2 points to add to that.
Go on.
Okay, so the first one is that first you have to go to search and search for a string, and after you have the tiddlers that have the string open, then you hit Control F or whatever for searches in the browser to search for the same string again. So then you have the highlighting and the previous next, which is doing one thing twice. Actually, I can do that. That's a workaround. But when I use TiddlyDesktop, there's no Control F and there's no additional search, and then this becomes a real problem.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So maybe it should be added to TiddlyDesktop, but it still can be improved, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, there's two issues there. The first is, well, I mean, basically the answer to your question is that I would like to have highlighted results in search results, and it's still very much on the list. It's just not something that's going to get done before the end of the beta. The second thing about TiddlyDesktop is a tricky area because there's, as it's turning out, there's an immense number of features that browsers routinely have that TiddlyDesktop lacks, and requests trickle in for pretty much all of those features. I think somebody raised a ticket recently for doing spell checking, which is, some of those browser features are a massive amount of work, and are, I think, highly unlikely to get done in the context of TiddlyDesktop. But it leaves me aware that we've got a bit of a problem, that if we make the goal of TiddlyDesktop to be the best browser for TiddlyWiki, then that does imply that it needs to have every feature that Chrome and Firefox and so on have. Now, it may be that part of the issue here is I adopted Node WebKit to use to make TiddlyDesktop. There are actually many alternatives to Node WebKit, with more coming out all the time. And it may be that what we actually have to do is switch TiddlyDesktop to a different platform that supports more of the out-of-the-box browser functionality. And so it's a fast-moving area in the industry, and it seems eminently possible that there will be, if there isn't already, a desktop platform that does give us more of those familiar browser features. But right now, it's a big challenge to try and implement those features in the context of a Node WebKit application. Branimir, does that answer your original question about search, which is basically, you said, any chance of adding a similar functionality in TiddlyWiki 5? And the answer is yes, I would like to very much.
But it's not coming for the stable version.
It won't be coming for the stable version, no.
Okay.
But I mean, on the good side, the stable version, I mean, I believe TiddlyWiki will never be finished, in the sense that I hope and intend to continue to improve it for the rest of its life. And the more it's used and the more feedback that we get, the easier it'll be to make those improvements. And the issue about coming out to beta is less about TiddlyWiki being complete and more about this promise of backwards compatibility. And in fact, that is a punishing goal. The knowing that I'm going to have to live for the next few decades with basically a whole bunch of decisions frozen on the 20th of September 2014. So it's a what's the word? A big challenge.
Well, there will be a 2.0 release, so all major changes you can postpone for.
Or 6, yeah. I mean, even then, I'll be trying my damnedest to maintain backwards compatibility, absolutely. So I mean, there are certain feature areas where I think one can get away with making changes that aren't compatible, and particularly there will be the odd refactoring that is bound to break some plugins because there's no limit to the dependencies that a plugin can incorporate on the core code. But obviously the focus is on changes that affect end users' existing content. And I think that updating content to me, is more expensive than updating plugins, because updating a plugin just needs to be done once by the plugin author, and then all the users of the plugin can take advantage of it. Whereas, of course, content updates by their very nature need to be handled separately by every single user of TiddlyWiki. Cool. Branimir, thank you. Anything else on that question about search?
No, but while we were on TiddlyDesktop, I also want to mention that another feature that I'm really missing there is the zooming. So
yes,
I like to zoom because the browser remembers every web page what the zooming ratio is. It was set, so every time it opens with the proper zooming.
Yes, that's something that we can do more easily. I mean, you'll be, because we can do it via CSS, basically, which is what browsers do themselves. So, yes, it's a reasonable one. I'd be happy if you wanted to put a ticket in the TiddlyDesktop repo for that one.
Yes, I will.
Because I mean, depending on how important, would it be useful? Is Zoom so important for you that you would use it even if it didn't have a user interface? So if there was a file that you had to go into and type in 1.2 instead of 1.0, would that be useful to you, or does it need to have the keyboard shortcuts and the user interface in order to be useful?
No, I don't care about the interface. Just I will set the zoom once per tiddler, and then it keeps it, then it's fine.
Good. Okay. Well, in that case, Tess, please do raise a ticket. That would be very useful.
I'll set it up, yeah.
And next question from Branimir. Are there plans for improving the contents macro? I guess this would be the equivalent of MainMenu in TiddlyWiki Classic. So what I think Branimir is talking about is this guy, the table of contents macro. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this was only very recently introduced, and what it lets you do is construct a hierarchical menu from a bunch of tiddlers based on their tag. So in this example, we're calling the table of contents macro with the parameter contents. That content corresponds to a tiddler. When we look at that tiddler, there's some text in it, but more to the point, there's it's tagging these 4 tiddlers, first, second, third, and fourth. So if I open tiddler first, you can see it's got the tag contents. And if I look at the list field here, you can, look at the fields, you can see that there's a list field on the contents tag that specifies the ordering for the tiddlers that have that tag. So with those bits of structure, we can construct this kind of hierarchical menu. So we've got at the top level all the things tagged contents in the order specified in the list field of the contents tag, and then under each of those we've got any further tiddlers with that tag. So second 3 is what is a tiddler that has the tag second, and second 3.1 has the tag second 3. So you can see how that hierarchical relationship is built up, and it's obviously extensible. If I add I add a new item thing, it'll appear. I think I tagged it with, I tagged it with a non-existent, so second 1 would do. Right, forgive me for yet another poor quality demo, but you can see I tagged that new tiddler second 1, and so it got inserted there. Now, there is a feature I've added just for 16, which is that you can now specify a caption field to give the text. So if we create a caption field, give it the text, hello Jeremy, then although the tiddler is still called new tiddler, when we scroll down to look at the table of contents, you can see that it's now labeled hello Jeremy. Then there are these variants that the first variant makes it selectable, so I can drill down exposing the child tiddlers. There's a variant of that where we only show the disclosure triangles for tiddlers that have children. So there are no tiddlers tagged fourth, therefore there's no triangle there and I can't open it, but I can open the third one and the second one, and I can see at a glance that second 1 and second 3 have children, but second 2 doesn't. A minor change in 5.16 is that now it does a better job of keeping the text lined up. And then finally, in response to a request from Dave Gifford, there's the ability to specify an explicit sort for each level of the hierarchy. I think very often it's best to use the list field of the tag, but sometimes you want to be able to sort by date or what have you. So,
Jeremy, the list field is always applied, so this is done by the core.
Yes, but here the sorting by the list field is immediately superseded by sorting by title
Okay.
in this particular example. But here, yes. So whenever TiddlyWiki needs to retrieve the list of tiddlers that have a particular tag, that list is always sorted by the list field. Branimir's question was, what other improvements do you have in mind? In fact, I think the macro itself is now useful. It's sort of got. I don't think there's that much that needs to be added to it. What's overdue, though, is that the table of contents that you see here inside the contents tab in the sidebar is built manually, so it's not built through tags. And that's incorrect, and I've already found it problematical because it means that when I introduce a new widget message, for instance, I need to remember to go in here to edit it in. And in fact, you can guarantee, yes, look, even I didn't manage to add all of the items that have been added in 5.16. So we added remove suffix as a new filter operator, and it's not listed here. So that's precisely why it's probably suboptimal to have that list being manually created. So that means a task that I do hope to perform before we get to the 20th is to refactor this to use tags, and that will then make it easier to make later changes. Another issue is I would like people to be able to choose a couple of options for how the contents is displayed. One of them is it would be very useful to have the option of a TiddlyWiki style presentation where the table of contents is on the left-hand side and we push everything else slightly to the right. It would also be useful to have perhaps on the top bar a button that pulls down the table of contents in a pop-up. So right now, that's the focus for me, is starting to use the new table of contents macro properly within the sidebar, and then making the table of contents available in other places with a bit more flexibility. But in terms of the functionality of the macro itself, I'm sure that I will receive many suggestions for improvements. I certainly hope so. But I'm not really aware of anything that's that I'd regard as a blocker to me, for instance, adopting the macro for displaying the table of contents in the sidebar.
Well, I just happen to have one such suggestion.
Go on, I like that.
So, like the one that you build manually, the categories actually are not content. They are the whole category name, including the arrow, is clickable, and when you clicked all over it, it will just expand or collapse. But when I build it through the macro, it does not collapse or expand, but actually opens the tiddler. And this tiddler is actually a tag which I have to convert to a normal tiddler, but I don't want to put any text in there. And actually, most of the times, I don't want to show the category as a tiddler. I just want it to be like non-openable, just to expand or collapse.
And that's an excellent point. I would also agree that I think in the case of TiddlyWiki.com itself, many of these entries, so these are the entries that Branimir is talking about, where in order to open them, I don't need to click on the disclosure triangle, I can click anywhere on the text, and therefore, unlike the menu items here, they are not links that open a new tiddler. So yes, it would be useful to be able to stipulate that the particular layer of the table of contents should not be linkable. So one possibility for that is that the tiddlers that do correspond to tags might gain additional fields that control how that tag is displayed, whether it's a link or not. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea, Branimir. You know what I'm going to say next, don't you?
It's not going to happen until the 20th.
Oh, no. What I was going to say next was it would be incredibly helpful if you wanted to make a ticket for it.
Okay.
And you know, I can. I mean, don't I can adjust it if necessary, but I think it's very useful if you, as the original requester.
So I'll just write it up how I see it, and
Yeah.
you will modify.
Yeah, I mean, the main bit I sometimes modify is the title, just trying to make sure that the title makes sense when one's looking at a list of all of the open issues. But I mean, really, it's that's the easy part. The hard part is raising the ticket. So, Branimir, I hope that's helpful. Really pleased that the people are using the table of contents macro. It's the sort of thing that I'd always thought we would need to provide easy support for. One of the things I think is quite nice is that the macro is a lot simpler than I was expecting. Just to emphasize that, it's just got 2 parameters, for instance. Which is fairly amazing that we can have something as flexible as this.
Yeah, it's actually a great macro, and I think it will be used even more. And what makes it even better is that people have actually arranged their contents with the help of tags. So
yes.
the categorization of topics is already there. You just need the mechanism to put it to a schema,
Yes.
like the table of contents. The downside is that I have to go and convert every tag that I want in the contents to be a normal tiddler.
But you don't anymore. You can make them be system tiddlers and use the caption field.
How would I do that?
Let me give you an example. So I created a new tiddler called new tiddler, in fact, that was tagged second one. Let's create another one, but we'll call it. Let's call it.
You need to create a new tag, I think.
So this is a tiddler that we'll use as a tag. So I'll call it my tiddler. We'll tag it second one. We'll give it a caption. My new tag. So now the situation is that we've got in the table of contents. We've got my new tag listed. When I click on it to open, you can see that it is actually a system tiddler. So all that's done is it means that now if we look in the all list or the recent list, it's not cluttered up by this tag that really just exists to provide scaffolding for the table of contents macro. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's great.
And then, well, actually, to round out the example, I should create another tiddler.
Jeremy, Nathan, can you hear us? Because I think
Yes.
Google will switch all the time because you have some background noise and the recording will be switching all the time.
Sorry, I'll mute.
So what I'm doing here is I've created a tiddler that's tagged with that system tiddler _ my tiddler, and just scrolling down to show now how that has appeared in the table of contents. So we've taken it on the chin. We've had to create a tiddler that is just a tag, and it's only there in order to provide additional information about that tag. But by making it a system tiddler, we've kept it out of the various lists here. So great, thank you guys. Let me. Any other comments on the table of contents macro?
Jeremy, there was a discussion afterwards, and with I think it's Danielo, yeah, and I did create some new plugins. So that the first one was that it ended all tags. So you have to have something like this. Let's say the structure had to be called Windows and then snippet and Linux and snippet and so on, which are some, let's say, cool macros. Should I create pull requests or should this be in plugins or something like this?
I think now we've got to. So this is a big topic. Pull requests. What should be submitted to the TiddlyWiki core? What I see all the time is, or I shouldn't say all the time, what frequently happens is that people, when they first start doing development for TiddlyWiki 5, that the first thing they do is make a pull request. And I think that's often not the right thing to do, especially not for the more experimental features. And the reason is because if there's, when we move things into the core, that also freezes them. So when we're developing new functionality in an experimental way, I think it keeps things much freer to keep things as, or to first develop things as separate plugins. So I think really our default should be, for anything new, it should be published separately first, and then we'll collectively make a decision about putting things into the core, depending on the feedback that we get from it as a standalone thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But there's some exceptions to that. I mean, and those are, those are the things. There's quite a few bits of functionality here and there, which wouldn't fit under the experimental label because we know fairly clearly that we would like them. An example would be a slider macro. So I think I've mentioned a few times we should have a slider macro in the core, and I think submitting a simple slider macro straight to the core would be a reasonable thing to do because it's in response to a request that may not be very clearly expressed, but a request for that functionality. But I don't know, even in that case, the slider macro, perhaps even more than the table of contents macro, its core functionality is actually quite simple, and there's a lot of scope for making its interface flexible so that it can be used in many different scenarios. And I guess that aspect of a slider macro would be experimental. So I mean, to be clear, the slider in TiddlyWiki Classic, it always slides in the content of another tiddler. I think in the context of TiddlyWiki 5, the slider macro I'd like to see is one that can do both, that can both slide open inline content and slide open content that's transcluded from another tiddler. So I guess I'm saying, the more I'm speaking, the more I realize what I'm actually saying is our default should be that things are offered to the community first as separate plugins, and then that they migrate to the core, and that should be the case unless we're talking about essentially ticketed items that are already ticketed for the core. And there's been a case in point over the last few days. The Divo, who is who's been active on the groups, I think, for quite a long time actually, submitted an alternative variation to the file system adapter, and the primary feature that he'd added was this idea that it should store tiddlers in folders that correspond to the hierarchical name of a system tiddler. So if you've got a system tiddler // blah 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 / blah blah blah, then blah 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 and blah 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 would both be directories. And I don't think I've explained that very clearly. Perhaps
I've seen this conversation. Is this also true for standard tiddlers, so that standard tiddlers can have their directory structure in the name, or should have the directory?
Yes, I think the way that I've implemented it, if you had non-system tiddlers with hierarchical names, they would also be treated like that. But in the conversation, what happened that I think was pretty undesirable is the Divo's contribution was awesome. Here's somebody who's thinking about and trying to improve the functionality of the core, which I really like. I think it was just premature to make it be a pull request. And by making it be a pull request, it meant that my feedback was all in terms of what it would take to make it, to get it into the core, and problems in that regard. Whereas I think actually it was such an experimental plugin that a much more important conversation to be having was, is this the right functionality? Is there anything else that it should do? The kinds of really end-user questions, answering questions about, is this useful, could it be made more useful? And the things that we ended up discussing, which were sort of boring details of GitHub development and standards in the core, I fear just looks off-putting to a would-be contributor. So I think part of the problem there is that people understandably would see successfully making a contribution to the core being, you know, a great way to repay the community. I think the problem is that we've actually got a lot of very boring things that need to get done as well. And so for people who, you know, want to get started with contributing to TiddlyWiki, I think as with all open source projects, probably the best way to start is with things that are not controversial, that are, you know, are broadly desired by a lot of people in the community, and can be done without too much controversy in terms of the feature itself. And I've seen other projects tackling this. I mean, I think our situation is different than many open source projects because the vast majority of contributors to TiddlyWiki historically have not been experienced developers. And I really love that. I think it's amazing that we've built a software product that is both attractive and tractable to non-developers. But it does mean that, you know, to the extent that I think a fairly commonly understood thing amongst open source developers is if you want to start contributing to a project, you know, you kind of start small. You start by sweeping the fireplace and helping to polish the front doorstep. And only after a while does it become feasible really to make the kinds of contributions that in a way are the fun ones, you know, when you add some new amazing bit of functionality that surprises and delights people. But, you know, an awful lot of open source development isn't as glamorous as that. And I think we'll get a lot more of that, contributions, you know, changes to the code that make little or no difference to end users, for instance, would be in that category as well, refactoring and so on. And not to mention documentation. There's no glamour in helping TiddlyWiki create its documentation, and yet we see all the time that the poor documentation of TiddlyWiki is a major obstacle for all kinds of people getting to grips with the project.
Yeah, I also have seen contributing to Tiddly Space, for example, as a contributor, or if you want to get something into the core, yeah, you just have to keep going. So there have been several things that I wanted to that Tiddly Space should know or should be able to do, and it needed half a year or something like this, or even a year.
Yes, well, hopefully we won't do as badly as that. But I mean, the other thing I should perhaps also throw in is that some of the things that I regret the most, you're not supposed to have regrets in this life, but I have no fear of identifying my regrets. Some of the things that I regret most in an open source context is accepting contributions often motivated by a desire to, well, not a desire to please the contributor, but a desire to be welcoming to the contributor that I have later regretted. So that is, in the case of TiddlyWiki Classic, the best example is the at the very beginning, the Wikifire didn't do formatting; it just did wiki links. And then I received a contribution, which is incredibly welcome, that added support for wiki text features like bold, italics, and so on, and also table support. And I thought, yippee, and accepted it. The trouble was that embodied in that submission was the wiki text syntax that that you know and love from TiddlyWiki Classic. Now, I didn't question the syntax that had been chosen by the contributor, but in fact, of course, that was the most important decision that was being taken. It wasn't really about the code; it was about what other wiki texts we were going to be compatible with. And I think that was a grave mistake. It was the sort of thing that's very hard to go back on, and even today with TiddlyWiki 5, we are living with the consequences of that decision. The reason why bold is 2 single ticks, 2 single quotes, is because I accepted that pull request, and yet clearly it should be 1 or 2 asterisks.
Yeah, I think there is also the TiddlyWiki had I don't know had a lot of traction, and Wiki Creole defined a lot of stuff according to TiddlyWiki, I think. So
yes, yes, I know. So the rest of the world can blame me.
The problem is that Wiki Creole couldn't adopt. So
yeah.
This is the problem. So it's at the moment I think it's Markdown that's on the wave. Yeah.
So the trouble is that I really I think I need to continue to set a very high bar for contributions, but we need to find other ways to make people feel that they can contribute and improve TiddlyWiki. Because, goodness knows, I would, I think, insofar as I'm responsible for the community and its activities, it's very important to me that we run an open, friendly community that makes people feel smart and, gets the best out of what people are prepared to give us, really. So saying no is not... that sounds counter to that goal. So we need to be able to say no, but, and often as to say the no would be, no, let's not put this in the core, but let's make it available as a plugin. Let's publish that plugin via tiddlywiki.com so that it gets as broad an audience as possible and we get as much feedback as possible before we then later drag it into the core. So now I'm realizing that according to the Q&A app, we're still answering the question about improving the table of contents macro. So let me press done on that. Any more on this topic of contributions, pull requests and such like?
That was a long answer.
Yes, I'm so sorry, and it wasn't even an answer to your question, most of it. Forgive me. Okay, so I've noticed there's another question popped up from Ton, which says, is it wise to go through the tickets, bugs, and features, labeling things before or after beta? So yes, is the short answer to that question. I've shown you a few times my list of things to do before the beta, and one of the things in the heading of cleaning up is review tickets for must-do items. We did do a ticket review within a Hangout once.
Long time ago.
Yeah, I worry that was made for a very boring Hangout, but we definitely need to do that. I would actually be, if we've got time, might even be up for doing a quick scan of that today on this call, but it may be that there's an hour left, so it may be that we haven't even left ourselves enough time to do that for today. But yes, definitely. And I mean, given the time frames, we're now talking about 2.5 weeks till the release. There's very, very little that we're going to be able to get in. But I think making it clear what our intention is would be a useful first step. So yes. Any other thoughts about that?
No.
Well, let's, whilst I'm still screen sharing, flick back to the agenda. So I'd like to talk about this next because it's quite fun. So the question is, what are we going to do to mark TiddlyWiki's 10th anniversary on the 20th of September? And of course, the obvious answer is we're going to release TiddlyWiki 5 and take it out of beta. But more than that, what might we do? So one thing that I'm very pleased about is on hopefully the 18th of September, I will be giving a tech talk, an hour-long tech talk at one of the Google offices in London, which I did before, actually. This time around, I believe they'll video it. I assume, yeah, there we go. There's a YouTube channel devoted to goodness. Embarrassingly eminent people compared to myself, but anyway, so hopefully it'll be good to get some attention. And in the past, I've had quite fun talking about TiddlyWiki to people at Google, because TiddlyWiki is so diametrically opposed to the worldview of Google, I think. And so to many Googlers, that makes TiddlyWiki an interesting thing. To other Googlers, it makes for tremendous comedy as they struggle to understand what it is. So brief anecdote. I shouldn't really tell anecdotes that embarrass other people, but I'm going to do so. In about 2005, I gave an informal, what do they call it, a brown bag talk at London's Google office. And you can imagine I sat there and said, so TiddlyWiki, here it is. It's a wiki written entirely in JavaScript that runs wholly in the browser as a single HTML file. And the Googlers in the room mostly had their laptops out and were, staring at their laptop screens. One of them popped up and said, "Oh, I see. So what server technology does it use?" And I said, "So it doesn't use a server. It runs entirely within the browser. It's written in JavaScript." And the response to that was, as I recall, "Oh, what version of Java is it using?" So it was one of those moments that we like to make fun of. I think Captain Cook, was it? And possibly apocryphal story when Captain Cook's ships were sailing into a cove in Australia, and the indigenous population, because they had never seen anything that looked like a ship, they literally, apparently, according to this anecdote, just couldn't see these ships, and in fact, they then got, I imagine, slaughtered as a result. And I rather felt that was what happened that time. That the thing that was distinctive and unusual about TiddlyWiki was so far outside the experience and the sort of certainties of some of the people in the room, that they literally couldn't parse what was going on. And I suppose also, if you're used to hearing other people using technical language in an imprecise way, a reasonable thing to assume, if you see a character like Jeremy popping up saying something that sounds counterintuitive and wrong, it's probably a reasonable assumption that they're wrong. Anyway, nowadays I'm sure we'll get a different and better and hopefully more helpful response, and clearly I'm hoping for some exposure as a result. So I'm trying to gently in the background do as many things like that as I can think of, calling in favors and so on. The other thing I'm thinking of doing is running a mega hangout. So on Saturday, the 20th is a Saturday, and my thinking is to run a hangout from 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock or something, 10 o'clock till 4 o'clock, for literally 6 hours. So it'll be it'll have a different kind of, I'll need to eat while it's going on and make coffee while it's going on. So the practical arrangements would be a little bit different than a normal hangout. But it might be fun to be able to welcome people who can't normally make it to our Tuesday hangouts. It'll also, I think sadly we have put some people off attending the hangouts because the emphasis in these hangouts is often on developer issues, and so I think that can feel, that does exclude some people, or it makes them feel excluded. So by having a hangout that's got a clear purpose that isn't about development, that perhaps that might again make for a new audience coming along as well. The other suggestion, although I'm focusing a lot on what we do on the 20th of September, which is the actual day of the anniversary. I think really it needs to be. We've got 3 or 4 months, maybe even a year, to celebrate the 10th anniversary. The 200th anniversary of America in 1977 was celebrated for a whole year, not a single day. So one of the things that I'm thinking we might do, or try to do, in 2 to 3 months, so maybe, actually 2 to 3 months is about Christmas, but probably after Christmas, therefore, is exploring doing a Tiddly conference. The reason I call it a Tiddly conference is because a couple of people have suggested it. Both of them have come from a academic conference tradition, where you create a paper or a poster and come along to the conference and talk about it. So that's one of the messages that I'm going to post to the group in the next few days, is to try and get a measure of interest for such a thing. Obviously people would be able to attend virtually, and obviously we'd film it and so on. But it would basically be a bigger, slightly more formal version of Oxtwig. So that would be fun for me. And looking at you guys who are in Europe, Mario, Ton, and Branimir, it would, for either of those events, either the 20th of this month or the proposed Tiddly conference, it would be awesome to welcome you to London. You can take 24. I mean, sorry, welcome you to Oxford, I should say. I know, it only takes 24 hours to drive from Austria to Oxford, doesn't it?
Yeah, probably. So there should be a plane. would be much.
That does sound more efficient. Probably more expensive. But then who knows? Maybe by then we'll be sponsored by Google and they'll be flying everybody around for it.
This would be cool.
Just don't let Google buy us.
I'd want to have a ticket. Yeah.
So I don't know. Any ideas? Really welcome. I mean, the Hangout is only going to work if you guys are able to attend it, and it'll only be interesting if other people besides me are there. And similarly, the conference, completely dependent on people wanting to come along. Yeah, I should be hoping for everybody's support on that. So that was it, really. Other than to the sort of the preparation for the 20th, I'm still hoping to get 2 more releases in before then, and I guess the last of those releases being the beginning of that week, the sort of 15th of September or something. So there's a bit to do in the meantime, but really we are getting very close to the point where it's there's a need to freeze features and so on. Certainly my approach to which tickets and bugs I'm looking at now is changing week by week as the available time diminishes in the way that time tends to. So let me just go back to the screen share. That was what I was going to say about the anniversary celebrations. Any other thoughts, comments from anybody on that? Okay, so let's, in terms of the 5.016 release, there was, I think I made a note in the posting to the group about TiddlyWiki Classic compatibility. So let's talk a little about that. So what we've got now is an edition of, sorry, I was just looking at my local version, but I can open it on tiddlywiki.com. So tiddlywiki.com classic parser demo is a demo of a new plugin which incorporates the parser module from TiddlyWiki Classic along with a bunch of other components with the goal of allowing users to drop in unmodified TiddlyWiki Classic tiddlers and for them to work. So you can, there's some instructions here, but there's also a bunch of tiddlers such as this guy. If you look at the type field is text x TiddlyWiki, and that's old TiddlyWiki Classic text. And if we edit it, you can see that, for instance, it's using triple curly braces for monospace in the TiddlyWiki Classic way, and it's invoking the slider macro that is a slider macro that is compatible with the TiddlyWiki Classic one. So the work that this is, did I mention this is all done by Buggy Jeff, as he calls himself on the group, Buggy J on GitHub. And there's really a lot to it. So as well as the actual parser, which is pretty much an I mean, it's a lightly modified version of the TiddlyWiki 2 one. There's, for instance, a new transclude widget that understands slices and sections. So that means that you can, in TiddlyWiki Classic text, use the standard TiddlyWiki Classic transclusion format and things will work. In the future, we can probably look at adding things like support for each tiddler. I think the emphasis to begin with will be on core features of TiddlyWiki Classic. Another example of a component that Buggy J has added is an adapter for what does it say, for rejigging macros from TW2 to TW5 style. So you can see there's work here to try to bring a pretty high degree of compatibility in, and to make it still possible for TiddlyWiki Classic content to access features of TiddlyWiki 5. So I think what it all adds up to is it'll still be very difficult to take an average random TiddlyWiki Classic instance and upgrade it. And the reason why it'll be difficult is because average instances of TiddlyWiki Classic appear to have 20 or 30 plugins typically, and we're a long way away from providing compatibility with all of those plugins. But at least for content that is mainly using the features of core TiddlyWiki, that it should be possible to move that content into TiddlyWiki 5, to add this plugin, for the content to largely work, and then for people to be able to make a gradual migration. So I can imagine, for many people who are maintaining a biggish body of information, a reasonable strategy might be to use the compatibility plugin to enable you to transfer everything, and then just gradually work through the upgrades of making the existing content take advantage of TiddlyWiki 5 features. So I think it's huge news. It means that where at the moment on the TiddlyWiki homepage we have all this terribly apologetic stuff saying TiddlyWiki Classic is still there, not fully backwards compatibility, everything has to be completely rewritten. And so what I've just shown you is the start of the smoothening of the upgrade path. And I must say, very, very grateful to Buggy J for putting so much effort into this. It's a project that he's been working on for quite a few months now. So any comments or thoughts on that? Is that what you're expecting, Branimir?
I don't know if this can be used for migrating TiddlyWiki Classic to TiddlyWiki 5, or it's just for displaying natural TiddlyWiki Classic inside TiddlyWiki 5.
It can be used for migrating. I mean, look, let me close all these tiddlers, and if I drag it in.
I mean, what is its use case?
Its use case is you've got a TiddlyWiki Classic TiddlyWiki and you want to upgrade it to TiddlyWiki 5. So in my Dropbox, I've got a test TiddlyWiki Classic document. If I open it here, so actually it's only got one tiddler in it. It's got one tiddler with a dodgy German character, but still I can drag that in. Oh, that was because I dragged it into the wrong place. Excuse me. I meant to drag it into here. So I'm importing that old TiddlyWiki Classic wiki. Bang! I've now got 3 tiddlers that came from TiddlyWiki Classic, and okay, their contents is useless. It's a very bad example. But if I go into edit mode, you can see they're still in TiddlyWiki Classic format. If I type into them, you can see that it's using, again, the TiddlyWiki Classic format for monospace. So yes, it's by making TiddlyWiki 5 compatible with TiddlyWiki Classic wiki text, it means that you can upgrade your TiddlyWiki Classic wikis by moving the tiddlers across into a new TiddlyWiki 5 instance.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, should there be some indication that we have text x TiddlyWiki as a type? So it would be easier for, let's say, mixed TiddlyWikis to see. Okay, if I have some time, I should try to convert it.
That's a good question. So at the moment, if in TiddlyWiki 5, normally, if I create a tiddler that's in TiddlyWiki Classic format, which I can do easily, you can see that you immediately get a banner saying warning of the compatibility problem, and that banner even appears when we're in view mode. If you click the upgrade button, then it switches the tiddler to TiddlyWiki 5 format.
Okay.
What Buggy J has done at the moment is made it so that banner is disabled, and that happens inside the plugin, meaning this template. So if I change this template to say I'm a class, get that banner. So whether it's worth keeping the banner, I just don't know. But we could certainly.
I thought about a little bit less aggressive banner.
Yeah.
So
something. I mean, you could
indicator.
imagine a little sort of something, but I can see that that's useful for the person doing the editing while they're moving things around. But it may well be that if you published a wiki that was in a intermediate state because you'd transferred the format of some tiddlers and not others, then perhaps the banner would be confusing for end users. But so very open to suggestion, but also this is Buggy J's baby at the moment. So I mean, he will, I'm sure, hugely appreciate expressions, other people being interested in what he's done and providing feedback and so on. I'm not 100% sure what his specific goals are. I mean, at the moment, the focus is clearly on supporting TiddlyWiki core content, but whether Buggy's sitting on a whole, he might be sitting on a whole bevy of TiddlyWiki Classic content that he wants to upgrade. I'm not quite sure what the situation is.
Yeah, I have seen his contributions, and there is also the concept of the let's say that you have different parsers, so let's say more possibilities with parsers, so that you could design your own language. So all these concepts is really great, but the concerns that I have a little bit is that we get TiddlyWiki Classic style requests, or let's say help requests in the Google group because they're using the wrong syntax and want to drag and drop them into TiddlyWiki 5. that are not TiddlyWiki Classic enabled.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of concern, but the overall concept is really great, so that we have the possibility to use or to design new languages and use TiddlyWiki, let's say, as the presentation platform is really great.
Yeah, I mean, Buggy's contributions have always been of a very high standard. I mentioned before that many TiddlyWiki users and contributors, this is their first experience of software development. Buggy, I think, along with Nathan, Eric, in fact, and a few other people, I believe, has a fairly extensive history as a software developer, and that's hugely beneficial to the project. Well, I still think it's pretty amazing that we've got so many non-developer developers, if you see what I mean. But still, having a few people like Nathan and Buggy around really does go a long way to making a big difference. Gosh, I just noticed my keyboard's filthy. That's the trouble with doing the Hangout in a place that's well lit rather than the normal dark places that I work in. Okay, so Branimir, that was actually in response to a question from you. Does that explain things sufficiently?
Well, I didn't understand it all, but I see I'll have to bury myself deep down into this.
Oh, well, let me. I'm determined to make sure that I explain things clearly. So let me. I probably gave far too much detail. Basically, Branimir, what all this means is that if you install this plugin, then TiddlyWiki 5 can display TiddlyWiki Classic tiddlers. And so you can already import TiddlyWiki Classic tiddlers into TiddlyWiki 5. The problem at the moment is that they don't display correctly. With this plugin, in many cases, they will display correctly.
Okay, say so if I want to migrate, I can then import my whole TiddlyWiki Classic inside TiddlyWiki 5 with this plugin, and then if something doesn't show up correctly, I can just modify the single tiddler in TiddlyWiki 5 mode, let's say, to translate it.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
Okay, and the only thing that I will have to change is something about the type?
Yes, the type field determines how the content is interpreted. So by default, it's set to TiddlyWiki 5, and therefore in TiddlyWiki 5, that gets interpreted as a filter. And if I change it to TiddlyWiki Classic, bing bang, it gets interpreted as monospace. So, I mean, you've identified what I think is the critical thing, is that it means that you can make a migration piece by piece. So, I mean,
that's exactly what I want.
Yeah, for people who want, I mean, you know, if one's goal is 100% TiddlyWiki Classic compatibility, then obviously TiddlyWiki Classic is the best platform, because by definition it is and will remain 100% compatible with TiddlyWiki Classic. So this is really about allowing people to make the migration in a way that avoids the sort of big bang of having to transliterate hundreds of tiddlers all in one go.
Okay, I see. So this type will show up in the list after I bring up the plugin, right? In
fact, the type is already there, even on tiddlywiki.com, and it's already there because so if that same wiki that I imported, with its 2.5 tiddlers in it, if I import it now into tiddlywiki.com, those tiddlers import correctly. It's just that they import entirely monospace, so it doesn't, by default, it doesn't make any attempt to understand the TiddlyWiki 2 wiki text format.
Okay, then what you have to do is to change the type manually for each tiddler. Is that
if you wanted to treat that tiddler as a TiddlyWiki 5 tiddler, but the new option we've got is instead to just drop in this plugin, and then those tiddlers will display properly.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
No problem. So next, I think we should turn to Mario's Cloud9 demo. But before we do, a little bit of context. So there's been much worry over the years about improving the documentation for TiddlyWiki. One of the things that I added in 5.015 is this ribbon, which says, hey, do you want us to help improve the documentation? And then there's a link to some instructions for improving the documentation, and a link to the particular tiddler that we're on GitHub. So what we're doing here is taking advantage of the fact that GitHub is trying very hard to have a easy-to-use web interface that allows people to send contributions without having to install any software, because it works entirely on their website. So the way that it works is still very targeted at developers, but they're trying hard to make the features available to non-developers. And in fact, our strategy of having markdown content in GitHub is one that lots of organizations and groups seem to be interested in, and so I think GitHub are very directly tracking that interest and trying to respond to it. So in the 5.16 timeframe, what we noticed was got some great feedback on these instructions, and partly from Ton, I think, who particularly raised this, that there was I'd missed out a message that GitHub tells you need to fork this repository to propose changes, which actually does need explanation for an end user trying to correct a missing apostrophe or something. The process that is described here is pretty confusing, and having baffling messages being issued by GitHub that you don't fully understand makes it even worse. So in response to some of that feedback, so we tried to improve the documentation. What Mario has done so far is a series of videos that explain how to make these changes. So this first one is, oh no, isn't it? Mario, you're recursively present in two different ways on this call, which just explains how to step through what I started there. So here we are on GitHub making changes, and ultimately I think you'll be clicking the commit changes button. And then it goes on to, so Mario goes on with two more videos to cover more complicated aspects, to try and, in this one, I think you're explaining how GitHub works to a certain extent.
A little overview.
Yeah.
Because for new users, the GitHub Web UI can be overwhelming. You only need, I don't know, 30% of it.
Yeah. And you're explaining forks, which is obviously conceptually new to most people who we're addressing here. And then this third one is back to more sort of instructional stuff, explaining how to send modifications to several tiddlers as a single pull request.
Yeah.
So the thing about all of this stuff is what we're trying to do is to take advantage of GitHub, because GitHub is already there. GitHub already allows people to make contributions. I'm already trained and set up to accept contributions via GitHub. But the starting point for this stuff is that GitHub is a terrible way for people to make content contributions. So I think that all that we're doing here is a kind of stopgap until we have a better approach. And that better approach needs to be a way for people to contribute changes without needing to have a GitHub account at all. So with that in mind, I'm pretty sure that we can never make a GitHub-based process easy to use enough for everybody who might be in a position to make a helpful contribution to the documentation. All we're able to do really is to increase the small percentage of people who are prepared to go to all this trouble to make those contributions. And of course, Ton is one of those people. I've had a whole handful of content changes from Ton in the last few days, which are terrific to see. And you may have noticed, Ton, something that often happens, which is when somebody proposes a change, that it can then trigger further changes from me. So the example, I think, was you sent through improvements to, gosh, what was it?
System tags.
The system tags tiddler. And Ton's changes, there we go. One of the main things was completing this list of system tags. So there are a number of system tags that were being used that hadn't been documented here. And in fact, this isn't the example. There was another one that you did, Ton, I'm so sorry, where...
List of types, I think.
Oh, that was it. It was the content types. And similarly, on... Here we go. This content type tiddler, Ton had made some changes to add this list of common content types, which actually reflects what you get in the drop-down. Immediately after I'd accepted those changes from Ton, that then provoked me to make some further changes. So I noticed that we didn't have CSS, CSV, and oh look, we've got 2 copies of plain text. So let's make a live change to that. And I think that's quite a common thing where a contribution from somebody else can actually help to push me to make more improvements as well. So it's almost as if for the effort that Ton has to go to make 1 improvement, we hopefully get 2 improvements out of it, because it also pushes me to make those improvements. But it's very much appreciated. These kinds of omissions aren't very glamorous. But if we do enough of them, I truly think we will be steadily improving the documentation, steadily making it easier for people.
I also have a question. So Ton, did it actually help the video that I made?
Yeah, for sure, Mario. The main thing for me was when I had to fork, I thought, oh, that's developer stuff. So I didn't know if I could go on. But what I proposed was already there. It's just the temporary fork. And then it's quite easy.
Yeah, this is the only thing that I don't like very much, because all the branches, they are called patch 1, patch 2, patch 3.
Yeah.
I would like to have something a little bit more useful. So that would be probably a pull request or an issue at GitHub. Because yeah, but on the other hand, this patch 1, patch 2 made me search for a better approach. And I think I found one which is really great, I think. And there is some really cool stuff going on with the Cloud9 environment. And David asked me to be a moderator for his content changes. And yeah, this puts a lot of, let's say, burden on me, because then I have to push and create pull requests and all this stuff. But on the other hand, with the Cloud9 environment, it may be possible, if we have moderators, 1 or 2 or 3, that someone which doesn't want to use GitHub still can contribute, and someone else just has to create a pull request. So there is some really cool stuff, and the editing can be done with TiddlyWiki. So that's what I wanted to show you.
Yeah, great. So let me stop screen sharing on the off chance that my screen sharing disturbs things. And would you like to take over and screen share and show us?
Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes. Or I did briefly, and then I said something and flicked it away.
So all the stuff is about Cloud9. I'm watching this project, I don't know, for about a year or so, or even longer. And at the very beginning, they they created a web-based
Mario,
IDE.
sorry,
Yeah.
Mario. I see your screen, but in a small square. I just see the logo of Jeremy. I don't know about the others.
I'm seeing the full screen now. It does sometimes take a while for it to ripple through to everybody.
Everyone else seeing the whole screen?
Yeah, I can see it, but just click on the Mario's screen at the bottom.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So they are creating a web IDE, which is a developer environment. The cool stuff there is that you have all the trees and you can, let's say, the directory structure. Okay, I have already created an account, so I go to my dashboard, and with this account, you have the possibility to connect to either GitHub or Bitbucket. So they also understand Git contribution. And I did already create, they call it a workspace, and this workspaces also can be shared. So this introduces the possibility, there would be a possibility that there is a moderator that prepares pull requests, and there are different users which can change the content, even at the same time. So this is quite interesting.
Okay.
So I did already import TiddlyWiki 5. So I can say start editing. And then the cool stuff is that they are spinning up a whole development environment for me. So I'll zoom a little bit. So here you have the TiddlyWiki 5 branch. This is the directory. Then there is all the tiddlers, all the build.
So, Mario, I'm so sorry, but did you open my TiddlyWiki 5 repo or your fork of it?
No, this is my fork of it.
Yeah.
So and also now I made another fork. So now I'm at the workspace at Cloud9. So it is totally independent of GitHub at the moment. So I can say, okay, if I want to go to an edition, I go to the edition tiddlywiki5.com. I can open the tiddlers, and I have all the tiddlers, all the information that I want. So I can say, okay, there is the download tiddler, and now I can edit it. And the cool thing is that you have here the collaborate button. So if I can invite different other users, and they could edit exactly this tiddler. So you have something like a shared environment.
You're making me think that I should go and create an account so that we can try this out.
Yeah, but not now. There is also one thing which they have, which is really cool. So it's something called run. So let's say, okay, let me create a new tiddler in the edit. Create a new file. Test.tidd. Okay. I just copy the content for the header. Text, community, video, whatever. This is not important. Type test tiddler. Then I have some new text. Okay, then I say Control S, so this is the same keyboard handling as with native environment. So I say Control S, and it is saved now. And then there is one thing which is really cool. I have prepared this already. I can say run with the configurations. And what I do now is a TiddlyWiki 5, a quick build, like the Q build. So I'm executing a bash script which creates a new index.html file in the output directory.
What is in that shell script?
It's the shell script from here. So this is this Q build. This is the batch batch script that is executed.
How have you assigned it to run command?
Pardon?
How did you assign this exact script to be executed with the run command from the menu?
This is easy. You say plus and say new run configuration, And then you have a click and select interface. So that's really cool. So it would be, I don't know, a 3 to 5 minute video to show it how it's created. It's really fun. And then you have also the possibility to create environment variables. And here I did define the output directory.
So this is like a virtual environment.
Yeah, it is.
All virtual servers.
I'll show you some really cool stuff. So there is the output. Then there is the index.html file. And what happens is that they already have prepared a lot of stuff. So in the terminal, I have some commands, for example, git. Git is already there. And there is also Apache web server. So I can say, okay, Apache 2 control start. Okay, it does it already. Then there are some environments variables. So there is the host name. So it's TiddlyWiki 5, C9, pmario, C9.io. So now I can go to this, C9, to this page, and okay, now I have a directory output. This is not what we want, but we have the output directory. And if I click it, I get the TiddlyWiki index.html.
Okay.
And there should be, oops, why is there no test?
Because the modification date wasn't changed.
The modification day, so there should be, how did I name it? How did I name the tiddler? It's T test tiddler. Here it is. There is the test tiddler in Cloud9, some new text that I created. So I did run the bash script. It creates an index.html file. Then in the terminal, I did start the Apache web server, and it serves, let's say, the whole directory structure. So this is actually not what we want. So we want to go directly to TiddlyWiki, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is an Apache configuration jobby.
Okay, yeah, this is an Apache configuration. It's at the TWC, so there is a little bit tricky stuff, but this can be prepared. No. Apache 2. It's the enable sites. Oops, sorry.
Well, it's the curse of live demos. I'm afraid I'm need to experience it.
So the default setting is this one, that it uses the workspace, and now I want to use the output. So I say save this information, and then I do Apache control restart. So now, if I refresh this, I should directly go to the index page. That's cool, right?
Excellent.
Okay. So, and to get even further, the problem here is what? If I want to write it, if I want to edit tiddlers, I just can download them. So I think it would be a little bit more interesting if we could start the server from TiddlyWiki, right? So let's stop the server and start the serve from TiddlyWiki. So there is the serve from TiddlyWiki. I needed to make a little change because I have to have the right IP address, so I need a third parameter. So let's start it. Why is it so slow?
So in this case, you're running
I'm in the output directory. Now serve.
You're running the script directly, whereas previously for QBuild, you kind of configured the script in this case, could you do either?
Yeah, I can do both. So in this case, I'm running the script from the terminal. I say serve its pmario, then I need a password, and then I need to change the IP address because they have the default setting set to 0 and not localhost.
Right.
Okay. So I'm starting the TiddlyWiki 5 server, which is built into TiddlyWiki, and now I reload the page. In normal cases, I should be asked if I want to, or I have to enter the password and the username. But there should be the server. Okay, it's running. So now if I say plus and create a new tiddler, say save, I should see something here. So I have the new tiddler and I have the ASDF tiddler, which is part of the editions tiddlywiki5.com tiddlers. Now there should be, there's my test tiddler, where is the ASDF tiddler? Here. Here is an ASDF tiddler, which is created with this server. Now it is part of this repository, which is really cool. So I have git, so if I say git status, I can see that there I have the ASDF tiddler and there I have the test tiddler. And now I would have the possibility to say git add all the stuff, git test. Oops. What does it say? Ah, it did it, okay. And then I say git push to my origin and C9 test. Yes. Now if I go to GitHub, to my repository, there should be a new C9 test, which I can compare and create the pull request. Isn't that cool?
That's amazing.
I have a possibility to use the TiddlyWiki 5 environment to create tiddlers within the TiddlyWiki 5 repo, and then create the pull request.
Gosh.
So that's basically it, and I think this is really cool. And they have changed a lot. So this terminal, in the background, they spin up a whole Docker environment for me, and this is a real Ubuntu environment. So also there is some power behind it. So if I open overview, so this is htop. So there are 8 CPUs with a lot of memory, most of it free. So this is really, really powerful stuff that's going on there. And I think with this, it would be possible if there are 2 or 3 moderators, so that we have, for Dave, we just have to tell him how the environment works, so he doesn't need to see all this stuff. It does.
So we can, you can create a Cloud9 environment into which Dave is invited, and then he makes his changes without needing to know about GitHub.
Yeah, this would be a possibility. So there are some run configurations. So we could have a run quick build and a run build all and run the test. So for example, for Stefan, I think this would be also a possibility.
Yes,
because this is really a full environment at the moment. I haven't seen how long the server is actually running, but I did test it, and 3 days it worked for 3 days. So it seems that they never shut down the stuff.
Wow.
For open source and visible, so there is everything is public. If you want to have private repositories or private workspaces, you only have one, and if you want more, you need to pay. I have read the terms of service, and I haven't seen any let's say any limits. Except if you save, I don't know, a ton of pictures onto their servers and serve it to other web spaces, then you will probably have a problem.
Yeah.
But for open source stuff, I think there is no limits at the moment.
That's amazing. Sorry, I interrupted Branimir. I think you were about to ask something.
No, I was just amazed. I wanted to ask, maybe I see, yeah, in this menu you have a build system, but then if you want to commit the change to GitHub, maybe you could have all this git commit with the message build up into the configured as something like a run menu.
Probably that's probably possible, but there are a few GitHub commands that you have to know. But I didn't test it if it would be possible, but I think it would be. I don't know if there is a interactive run, because in normal cases you would have to set a password, as I did, as I run the server. So I had to say my username is pmario and there should be a password, and then start the server. And this can't be public, so that there should be, for different users, should be different passwords or something like this, or let's say a password that really changes over the weeks. Because TiddlyWiki, the server, at the moment doesn't have, let's say, a lot of security built in. So the cool thing here is it is served from HTTPS. So the standard password dialog should be safe. This would be okay to use a mechanism like this.
Yes, yes.
And also we could have another let's say C9 build, which let's say hard codes this information already. So you just need a username and a password. But the commit stuff and all this should be possible to do. But if we do it with a moderator, then it would be me that creates the pull request, or let's say a moderator that creates a pull request.
Yes, I like that idea very much. I mean, I think with Git, what we have learned is that Git on the command line is clearly too confusing for most people. But I think what we've learned over the last few days is that even GitHub on the web is still quite complex. Even though it doesn't require people to go to the command line, they still need to understand quite a lot about the concepts of Git in terms of what is a fork, why do you create them, and so on. So what I really like about this approach is exactly that, the mode where we have an administrator.
Yeah.
I mean, and that seems amazingly nice.
Yeah. So there is now you have the possibility to define read and write access. So I have read write. You can have read write too. Then there is something which is called notifications. I don't know yet. There is a group chat, and the cool thing is if you open a tiddler, and then you have two cursors at the same time, and two people can write at the same time to the same source. This is really
fun. That's amazing.
And
so
chat
for example, and chat about it. So maybe if you have TeamSpeak or something like this, you can have several people talking, or a Hangout. Hangout would be okay too. So you can talk and edit with the same source. I think this would be a really good possibility. And David just needs to open this structure, edit the information, or we can even say, okay, the editor runs, and you can edit your stuff within TiddlyWiki, which would be even cooler.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I understood Cloud9 to be an impressive sort of online editor, but I hadn't understood that it's also a hosting environment.
Yeah, I think this is new with the new version. So I think the first posts are there from May or something like this. There are the blog posts when they
Switch those features on, right?
Yeah, browser testing with Cloud9. Yeah, then there is also one thing that you have the possibility to test within different browsers, within different environments. So there is a preview button. I think this would be quite interesting for you. So we have the preview, raw content. No, if I load the HTML, I didn't test this very much, but it should be possible if I say preview in web server. This web server, now preview, live preview. And there you have the possibility to use the mobile browsers from SourceLab or desktop browser, so you can spin up from Linux, OS X, and I think it's 2 hours. It's limited to 2 hours at the moment, but you can spin up different browsers and test the HTML with this with all these browsers.
Can you show us what TiddlyWiki looks like with links, please?
With links? Oh yeah, let's have a look.
So actually, this looks like a real resource. If they strip it down to 2 hours, means that other people are using the browsers.
Yeah, it's mainly a testing environment. There is nothing, I think.
Boo!
Get it with full screen. I don't think that.
Oh yeah, no, it's saying, do you want to continue?
Ah, yeah, okay. So I'm waiting for response. Ah, okay, it says something.
Yay!
Yeah, but yeah, it would be interesting if there's something. What is it?
You have to accept each cookie. Wow, brilliant.
Yes, okay.
That's the way the web should work.
Oh no.
It's a little bit slow.
It's a bit Spartan.
I did already press something, yeah. Allowing this cookie. Oh, okay.
Wow. Oh, okay. So JavaScript's disabled.
But at least it does something.
At least it does something. That's amazing. Can we try another funky browser, please?
Yeah. Okay. Desktop? Internet Explorer or
well, no, because I tried those. Maybe one of the other mobile devices that I don't.
There is mobile browsers. Android.
Yeah, let's try one of these Androids.
No, there is Android. Android is nothing. Okay.
Oh, but see, iPad. My iPad is actually on iOS 8, but my phone's on iOS 7, so I've tested those. I'd love to.
iPhone iOS 7.
Yeah, so try 6 or 5 because those.
Okay.
But 7 I've tried, but.
Okay, let's have a look because I did already start it.
Yeah. How amazing! I like their animations as well.
It even has a please wait animation.
Yeah, I think now it has to spin up a whole virtual machine, and with the emulation of iOS 7 and all this stuff. So
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. I also thought this would be really interesting for Jeremy because I think it's time remaining in the corner here.
Yeah.
It started with 2 hours. So
is that 2 hours on your account or 2 hours each day, or?
No, 2 hours on the account, I think. But I don't know. I haven't have a look at the description about this. I just was curious to how to start the server, because yesterday I couldn't start the server because it always starts with localhost, and there is no connection. And today I found the environment variable, so I just need to set it to 00. And then it actually worked. Yeah, the funny thing also was the Apache thing I discovered by accident because I said run with, and then I said Apache, and then it started the server, and then I go to email to the URL address, and then I saw the directory structure, and then I said, oh, it would be interesting. So can we save it, and will it work? Okay.
Oh, yeah, there you go. We're loading in.
Okay.
Awesome. You probably have to scrolling is probably a matter of.
Yeah, it works with the mouse.
Yeah, great.
It works. Cool. Oh, there was a zoom. How did I do this? Cool. So maybe zoom a little bit in again. Yeah, zoom in, not out.
Well, I must say it's being also quite conservative in what it charges you for time as well. And let's say you're not paying for the waiting time.
So probably, yeah. But it's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, those vertical tabs aren't a brilliant thing on a mobile device.
Yeah. So there should be a possibility to spin the stuff. Yeah, but yeah, that's it. So I think with this setting there would be a possibility that the workload for moderators, is not too high, so it would be possible. On the other hand, I think the biggest problem for new users is that they think they can damage something, so they can break something.
Yeah.
This will never happen with GitHub because it is a distributed source system, and so even if GitHub is broken, I have it on the hard disk, you have it on the hard disk, and several others have all the stuff on the hard disk, including the whole history.
Yeah.
So it won't break. And if you really break it on GitHub, I did break my repository several times. I just delete my GitHub repository and cloned it from you.
Yeah.
So I think, and this is the biggest concerns that new users have, that they may break something, which doesn't happen.
And can you the environment that you've set up here, the TiddlyWiki 5 environment, can somebody else copy that environment from you?
I think so, but there is not much. So it's only this quick build which I did. And the rest is default. It's only the Apache setting that I changed.
Yeah, indeed. And in fact, that Apache setting, I mean, I take your point about it being desirable to have to put the subpath in. But in fact, it's opening up to the files is not bad because it helps people to understand what they're looking at. You know, if you've navigated to an HTML file, then you know exactly which HTML file you're looking at. Plus, I assume that you can bookmark, obviously, those pages. So no, it seems amazing.
Yeah, and also so you have all the Unix commands. So it's a Ubuntu environment.
Yes, it's just like that bit in Jurassic Park where the girl says, "This is a Unix system. I know this."
Yeah. Oops. What is it? Minus A or something. Yeah. So it's Ubuntu 14.04 LTS. And it's covered. The whole system is covered inside a Docker.
So it's actually the latest version of Ubuntu here.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
That's
very nice.
Yeah, and also there is npm. So I have npm. I have Node. It's all there. Oops, how do I?
So this is all pre-installed in this virtual environment.
Yeah. How can I go out of Node?
Control D maybe.
Oh, Control C.
Control C. Yeah, okay. And npm, everything is there. So this is really cool.
So you can actually allow another user to log into this environment. Because you said it's limited to one environment per user. Maybe you can.
No. Every workspace gets its own environment. So if I go to my dashboard again, and I say, okay, I want to have my code mirror. I can say clone to edit. Then it clones it from my GitHub repository into their server. And then I get the new environment. The cool thing is that they even have MySQL and several other databases that you can use, MongoDB and this stuff. So there should be a possibility that you spin up databases if you need.
But you mentioned something that if you need more than one, you have to pay for the others.
No, if they are private, if they are public, you can have as many as you like. And if you want to make it private, then you have only one for free. The others have to be paid.
But still, several users can work in one and the same environment, and you said we can edit the files.
Yeah.
So this is enough.
Yeah. It's cool. So that and even it would be very interesting to have this, let's say, parallel editing. So there are two cursors with different people, and they're typing at the same time. I think this could be really great fun. Then there's somewhere there should be the prices. Privacy. Do you see it? I don't know. Yeah, there is for private workspaces there is a price, and it's designed for companies.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, if I was in a professional environment, I think I'd use this like a shot and pay for it as well.
Yeah, I think the collaboration stuff should be tested, and also, as I said, they don't shut down the server.
Yeah.
I don't know if they restart the server if it crashes. So you would need an external resource that checks the health of the server. But anyway, for testing and also for developing the documentation, if David can use the front end and just create content, I think it would be great.
Yeah. Well.
And then I think it would be interesting to create, let's say, a file syncer that allows you to create new directories. So that not everything in this case is within the tiddlers.
Yes, which goes back to the diverse suggestion.
Yeah.
I think this just cries for another Hangout dedicated to Cloud9.
Yes, Shaman, it was making me think we could have a Cloud9 party hangout where we do undertake some joint tasks like documentation reviews with it.
Yeah, this would be interesting. So there is, yeah.
Well, I still think for me the biggest problem that we face is around documentation. So I'm most delighted to see your work to help support Dave. Dave's got, he's already shared with me some early drafts of content updates, and there's no question he's a great person to do that documentation because he's not a developer himself. The natural audience that he writes for, I think, is much closer to the TiddlyWiki audience than I typically manage, because I'm often really talking to you guys, talking to the other developers. And yet, I think that the hurdles of getting Dave to the point where he's doing all the GitHub stuff it's just sort of, it feels so wrong, because the last thing I want to do is to turn Dave into a developer, if you see what I mean. So yeah, no, amazing.
Yeah, and with this, I thought as I tested the TiddlyWiki server, as I found out about the IP address, the right one, I thought that this would be great for Dave. So he just needs to know the password, and then he starts producing content, and then for safety he just should download full HTML so that you have a backup. So if this fails, or something like this. And then when we trust the backend, then he just needs to do a security backup, and that's it. And then he sends a mail to a moderator, and the moderator creates a pull request for him. Because this is, I don't know, 5 minutes of work.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, look, as I say, Mario, really grateful to you for putting the work into this, making developers are supposed to scratch their own itches, but I think you're setting a great example by, I was going to say scratching somebody else's itch, but that sounds undesirable, but you know what I mean. So we should draw to a close now. We'll have another hangout as normal next week. I think the topic, one of the things that we should decide is whether we're going to try and tackle the tickets then on that hangout. If I get a chance, I will try and do a pass through the tickets before then. But I think that might be, well, it's just about the last point at which it might make sense to do that.
And Jeremy, I think that probably would be a good idea. I know that there's a lot of tickets there that could use some organization, and I think that it's sort of a good juncture to kind of start planning next steps as well.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I also have one point with the tags pop-up. In the HTML DOM, there is still a p tag that makes styling and theme development very, very complicated. So I can create the pull request for this one because I wanted to have a pop-up with 3 columns, or let's say more, and the p tag has a padding which is assigned to the first column only. So the first column is so everything is out of position.
Oh, I'm not seeing the p tag. Just say on the tag dropdown.
On the tag dropdown, if you are in edit mode.
Yes, of course, you're right. And yes, a pull request would be very greatly received. That's an easy one to remove.
I think so. But it also has some. It needs some changes for the CSS because the wrapper needs some padding.
Yeah. Well, great. If you do fire away and do that, and if there are any others in the same vein, of course, I'm very keen to fix those too.
And also, there is a class which is called TiddlyWiki something pop-up, and I wanted to have a slider, so the TiddlyWiki class pop-up is not right. So I think there should be a more generic name for the wrapper.
Okay.
So I'll create the pull request for this one.
That would be much appreciated, Mario. Thank you.
While you're looking at the tickets next time, will you also cover TiddlyDesktop?
Probably not, actually, because I think with TiddlyDesktop, we'll probably, after the release of TiddlyWiki 5, I think we'll probably then have a run at trying to get TiddlyDesktop properly cleaned up. I mean, I was hoping to do more work on TiddlyDesktop in August, but as it's turned out, I've just been too focused on TiddlyWiki 5 itself. And there's a few things. I'm getting TiddlyWiki in the sky working with TiddlyWiki 5 is also on my list for doing immediately after the release. But don't let that hold you back, Branimir, from making suggestions or asking questions or anything. It's simply the two concerns would be whether I'm going to have any time to work on TiddlyDesktop and wanting to keep the Hangout potentially. If we are going to go through the tickets, we're going to need the entirety of the Hangout, I think. And so that may not leave much time.
I see.
But if we can, we will. And as I say, in the meantime, if there's anything on your mind about it, fire away either with a ticket or a message to the group. And it's always very good to have your feedback.
Sure. Thanks.
Guys, thank you very much indeed. As I always say at the end of the Hangouts, very grateful to you for your time and attention. You've no idea how useful these sessions are for me. It is really your attention and focus that drives this whole process along. So thank you very much for that. So let's do our normal waving goodbye to everybody, and we'll stop the broadcast. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye. See you next week.